listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, the place to learn about new technology and technological advances before they become mainstream. This episode is sponsored by Ingram Micro MPS. Simple, flexible, profitable. Let's get into it.
Welcome to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro. I'm your host, Keri Roberts, and my guest today is Paul Sin, a senior program manager at Ingram Micro. Welcome, Paul. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Keri, and thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
With a lot of people going back to the office, there is this idea to a move of the new normal. You know, nobody really knows what this means, but I'm curious, how do you define what a new normal might be?
That's a great question. Not sure what it's going to look like, but obviously safety for everyone will be first. We all are going to have to get used to new policies and procedures, and for everyone, it's going to take time for us to get used to. How we conduct business is going to be different. Having group meetings in a meeting room, I don't know when that's ever going to happen again. But business tasks will remain the same, or should remain the same. And for example, your printing needs, you're still going to need a print, you're going to still need contracts, and you still need signatures. So a lot of the simple tasks, I believe, will remain the same.
Now, Ingram Micro has something called MPS, or Managed Print Services. For those that don't know what it is, can you talk about what MPS does and how it helps people, especially now, to keep them safe and healthy as well?
Sure. So MPS, for most, it's basically a print services program. It's a management program of your printer supplies, making sure you have it when you need it. The way our program was built was really focusing on the SMB business. And the way it's been built, especially with today with the pandemic and a lot of financial strains, I think our program really fits to what the market needs. Healthy investments, safe investments, low risk for partners, really reducing that financial burden and moving customers or end customers to service contracts where it becomes a lot more affordable. We extended our terms where we originally had 3 years. We added 4 and 5 years, which obviously helps in tight cash situations. And we're really relieving companies of capital spend without losing their business output.
Now let's talk about the printing industry as a whole, because over the years, of course, it's changed. And now with more people working from home, companies that make and offer printing services, of course, have to adjust. Can you share with us some ways these companies have been adjusting over the past few months?
Sure. Companies or partners, they've been expanding their offering in different ways. They have to expand the way they manage a network, now expanding into the home office, data security from the home office. The OEMs or vendors are building out additional work from home solutions. For example, there are categories within mid to small markets. They're adding new solutions. HP has a product which they'll be launching, the Never Stop. And Lexmark's putting a lot more focus within that category, as well as building out their product line. So there's a lot of jostling to be able to support this new environment that we're in today. The line cards are going to obviously expand, as well as their reach and expertise.
Now, there's some interesting and exciting trends for printing in 2020, which include things like on-device apps. And of course, MPS is also expanding the scope to include managing networks and securities. Can you give us some more details on these options? And are they things that are available now?
And so home security is going to be a big factor. Security has always been a concern. But when you think about it, it's really been in the workplace, maybe a little bit personal. But now your home is now an office, so it's going to have different needs. There's apps out there. Printers do come with a lot of security protocols already built in, but there are additional apps that people are going to want to consider and add to their network or system. For example, workflow, sending data over the internet into the cloud. You want to make sure that's secure and it's encrypted. And having that workflow app in your system, in your home office, in your printer is going to be critical.
And one of the things you suggest is that implementing the necessary safety precautions requires careful planning. And many companies are looking at occupancy management and visitor screening technology to help them meet the demands of the moment. What kind of planning do you suggest companies have in place when it comes to remote work and MPS? And how specifically are organizations currently helping for this new normal?
Obviously, companies are trying to figure out how to come back into the office. Great example, our company, we're using different phases of maybe 25% of the associates at a time, 4 phases. You're going to see the landscape within companies changing, the infrastructure, meaning the equipment. We do see, for example, in the print space, I think we're going to see a reduction of the larger printers, the giant workhorses, because of the reduction of the workforce in the office. So more desktop printers are going to become popular within the office. Obviously, home office use, you're going to see that as well. So in my opinion, you're going to see an uptick in what we consider the A4 side of the business. And as I mentioned earlier, the OEMs or vendors are looking to broaden their space within that to address those needs. The remote worker will drive a lot of new business and services. As I mentioned, security, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be a big question, how you implement those type of protocols and procedures and apps into people's homes and their printers. Printing has come a long way. As I mentioned, they have a lot of firmware protocols already built in, but there's some additional things that you're going to have to consider. Work from home is becoming a permanent option. Before it was a nice to have. Now it's almost becoming a need to have. And as I mentioned, sending files and storing files, depending on what verticals you work in, are going to be very, very critical.
Now, you had mentioned that companies that are sending some of their employees back to the office, they're sending about 25% of them back to the office. Do you have any suggestions of what employees should look for and expect from their company in terms of safety?
That's another great question, tough one to answer. But from what I'm hearing and what I understand, just my opinion, I think companies are doing the best they can. The CDC, they're listening to them and trying to get direction from them, the local government, learning from each other. Some companies don't want to be the first to go back to the office. They're kind of learning from others. There are changes that are happening within business. For example, restaurants, they're moving to one-use menus. So printing is going to be a service that they need to know about and understand. Businesses are going to have to adapt. As associates, we're going to have to be flexible. And as customers, we're going to have to be patient as the new norm and solutions and all these different ways of going to business are going to be changing. We have to look at a lot of details, and we're going to be adjusting as we go along. Well, another good example is the mortgage company. I recently refied my house, and the mortgage rep I was working with was sending files to the office. So there was limited people in the office, and they were doing the printing and sending out of the documents. So it's a unique situation we're in, and everyone's trying to find the right answer and the right workflow. So a lot of creativity and flexibility and patience is going to be needed.
Now, MPS is trying to find other ways to make employees feel safe and stay healthy. And you were telling me earlier about shipping products to them versus going into a store. Can you talk more about that?
Sure. With MPS, the big component or the big benefit or value is having toner when you need it, not having downtime and toner shipping out obviously when you need it, as I mentioned, and not having to expose yourself or having downtime going to a store and picking it up. The MPS with today's environment is a great solution to be able to monitor your printer, make sure it's secure, and to send out toner when needed.
Now, the question we ask all of our guests on this show, Paul, is where do you see technology going within the next year?
That's a tough question, but a great question. Hard to give an answer, but I could tell you the home office is going to be a commonplace. Example, my house, we have 3 rooms now dedicated to offices. 2 offices, one for my wife and I, and for my daughter for college now that it's gone online. So your home has now become a school, an office, and whatever it is to be able to support your everyday life. So it's interesting, but we're in unprecedented times. But yes, the home office is going to be a very common place. And as I mentioned, also a potential school.
Yes, I could not agree more on that account. If people want to learn more about what we talked about, or they want to connect with you to ask questions, where is the best place to do that?
They can reach us at our MPS mailbox. It's mpsorders@ingrammicro.com. Again, that's mpsorders@ingrammicro.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for sharing your insight and knowledge with us today.
Oh, thank you, Keri. Appreciate it.
If you like this episode or have a question, join the discussion on Twitter at Ingram Tech Soul with the hashtag B2B Tech Talk. Thank you for tuning in and subscribing to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro.
You've been listening to B2B Tech Talk with Ingram Micro, hosted by Keri Roberts. This episode was sponsored by Ingram Micro MPS. B2B Tech Talk is a joint production with Sweetfish Media and Ingram Micro. Ingram Micro production handled by Laura Burton and Christine Fan. To not miss an episode, subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform.